When it comes to narrating the self, philosophy has always been an avenue to explore that certain type of topic. For one, philosophy argues several concepts on who we are, why are we here, and all the other fundamental questions in life. However, as one dives into the field of philosophy, instead of finding quick answers, such as the same thing could be for mathematics, in philosophy rather, we keep spiraling down into different questions on who we are, who we aren't, and what makes us us or ourselves. And in this video, we are going to tackle on the philosophical view on our identity and what does it imply for us in terms of the field of philosophy.
Asking yourself, who am I, is not merely a question that has a simple answer. For many of us, defining who we are is simply telling our name, where we came from, what is our favorite food, where did we go to college, or even the color of our hair. We think that identifying our personal identity can be as simple as telling a story of what have we become during the course of our lifetime, what is our skills or interests. But in philosophy, personal identity deals with many questions that arises about ourselves. The ultimate question of our existence focuses on what it takes for a person to persist through time. Our persistence through time is determined on how human can survive in the passage of time. In surviving through time, a person must have the necessary and sufficient conditions. From the view of philosopher John Locke, personal identity persists over time because you retain memories of yourself at different points, and each of those memories is connected to one before it.
The self or personal identity deals with philosophical questions that are mostly answered by one's consciousness. One's identity composes one's view about metaphysics of materials in general. The self is what makes you unique, different, or distinct from other people. However, the making or constructing of the self is an active and ongoing process of figuring out between who you are and what we should do. This process to construct the self involves a narrative manner in which events in one's life would be gathered together and would gain significance based on the relation of the stories.
Philosophy talks about the overall speculation of the overplayed question, what makes you you? Whether physically or culturally. In response to this, building oneself is a continuous effort that is mostly dependent on one's consciousness, like making decisions based on a set of things you are born with, or as. Simply speaking, we are in control of our own decisions, but are not fully aware of how these choices shape our identity. Self-actualization, or realizing one's wants and aspiration, is perhaps the best path to unlocking oneself. That being said, the existence of self also begs the question, if we and our own respective identities cease to exist when we die, there must not only be some type of legacy that lives on, so to speak, but apart from that, there is also the matter of being able to distinguish yourself from somebody else, particularly somebody who shares the same qualities as you, for example, like physically or culturally. How is that person not you?
In the philosophical view, the self is identified as that of many things, considering mainly of the numerical identity of a person in a specific course of time. What features and traits characterize oneself in a given time? Basically, the answer to one of the most asked questions on self-identity. What makes you still you over the course of time? There's theory after theory that suggests an answer to what part of our identity makes us unique in comparison to everyone else, no matter the similarities we may encounter. Although philosophy holds numerous possible answers, it boils down to oneself being in control, not just of their actions, but the way they live their means and experience things and gain knowledge that will somehow always be different than that of another person's. Basically, the self is described as one of a kind, even when we die. Of course, there is an idea of reincarnation, but does that really mean we get to live as who we were when we were alive? A person will always be different from another despite the similarities because of numerous variables to take into account. With that being said, it can be concluded that no one can be the exact same version of somebody else because each of us is different in some, if not in more ways than one.
I think the article's concept helps us to understand that the different questions like persistence question, population question, and personal ontology questions. These questions answer why we exist in this world and why our identity is important. Because it connects our psychological and physical perspective together, which, for me, it's critical.
The implications of this perspective of the self to everyday life is that we will undergo development through time which depends on the path we choose to follow. Also, the implications of this perspective is that it also shows and tells us that personal identity is bodily identity. An allied view is that we are bodies, a human person and her body are one and the same, stated in the part The Bodily Criterion in the article Personal Identity by Eric T. Olson. Every single day, we use this perspective to grow as people and to improve our knowledge about life. This enhances our critical thinking and our idea of how we feel these different kinds of emotions in our daily lives. We use this perspective when we make up and decide on what to do today and what you want to do in the future. Using this perspective in our daily lives, we tend to know more about ourselves and what we want to do in the future.
Looks like them. A personal understanding of the self does not go as deep as the text explains. Understanding of the self for us merely means knowing who we are as individuals, our beliefs, our likes, dislikes, our behavior, our abilities, characteristics that differ us from others. It is more of a general perspective of how we know ourselves rather than how we understand ourselves. The gap comes in between our general knowledge about understanding ourselves and the philosophical perspective or our understanding of our self identity. Based on the text, there is a general problem which is self identity that can be narrowed down into three main questions. We have number one, the persistence question, number two, population question, and number three, personal ontology question. The persistence question basically talks about how a person survives from one time to another. As human beings, we go through events that shape us and contribute to our identities. Now, there are times wherein we are one person or we have this one trait, but because of events we experience in our lives, we change. For population question, it explains which identity has stayed throughout time. And for our personal ontology question, it is how people came about, where we come from. This is the normal philosophical questions. In conclusion, the gap between our personal understanding of the self and the philosophical perspective is that we are only aware of the general view that understanding oneself only encompasses knowing ourselves, as compared to the philosophical view, which has a deeper perspective of understanding oneself. It acknowledges the general problem of self identity and challenges the self to really think about his or her identity as a whole, the experiences that shaped him, his past, present, and future self, as well as knowing our origin and why we are the people we are today.
As it was stated earlier, philosophy, once you dive into it, will only spiral you into several questions, especially on the fundamental truth of the universe, such as discovering who we are and what we are made of. When tackling these answers, which was relayed earlier, we can see that who we are in the philosophical view is subjective on what perspective and lens we look into it. We may think that the narrative self would define who we are from starting to finish, or the choices that we make would define who we are. On top of it all, from the narrative self and the choices we make, we also need to consider the external factors that affect the journey that we have and the choices we make. Do we say that we are who we are because we make the choices we do? Do we say who we are because of the things that we've been to? How about the past, present, and future? Who are we really? Are we really the person we are in the past, the person we are today, or the person that will be? And in answering philosophy on who we are, it will only gives us questions. And in the end of everything, the answer lies in a deep, metaphysical, metacognitive thinking and pondering on who we are.